Hello and welcome back to another video. What was a lovely sunny day or morning when I started out, and all of a sudden, very December-y, it's now the middle of December, the fog has come down. Luckily I know where I am, there's not a lot of fear of getting lost. I'm out on another local walk, and I thought we'd have a closer look at the River Nene. I did a walk a few weeks ago in this area looking at the old Northampton-Peterborough railway line, which is in my videos. If you care to have a look at that one, and I'm standing on the old track bed again, but today we're going to walk a little bit further down and have a look at the River Nene in a little bit more detail. So come with me. So here we are now, right down at the river. If we just pan around a little bit. As the river goes, it's quite wide here. So this is the River Nene. The actual navigation of the river, which means you can actually boat on it, is about 88 miles in length, and that goes right from the centre of Northampton, round about South Bridge in Northampton town, to right to the wash, basically. We do have some quite low bridges on the river, some medieval bridges and some quite low farm bridges. So boat-wise navigation, it is very much limited to headroom. Obviously, since the advent of steel narrowboats, we get quite a few steel narrowboats. As in Northampton, we have the Northampton arm of the Grand Union Canal, which comes down from Gayton branch of the Grand Union and joins the river. So it's quite easy to get onto the River Nene from the Grand Union Canal with the Northampton arm, which is about 4 3/4 miles in total, I think, with about 17 locks, and it's great fun doing the Northampton arm. So oh, there's a pheasant. I could hear a noise. So yeah, the river was first looked at being made navigable in about 1576, I believe, and into the 1600s, but really nothing came of that. And then several goes were made in the 1700s, and there never seemed a lot of enthusiasm. I suppose it was all about cost in those days and money. I think finally, and I'll probably put this on text, it was late in the 1700s when the river was finally made navigable the whole way from Northampton to certainly Peterborough and beyond. Nothing like we know it nowadays. Very basic locks, some of the locks that were constructed then, like rush locks almost, quite hazardous at certain times, because this river is very, very prone to flooding. It can come up these days, a hard thunderstorm, can bring it up way beyond the bank. If we look over there and I zoom in, there's a bulrush over there I can see. My hands are cold, hold on, let's not wobble the camera about. Don't know whether you can see that bulrush there, but I mean at times the water comes up to that and it'll be into that meadow where those trees are over there. It's got a reputation of flooding very quickly, and it also goes down quickly, I have to say. But obviously this has been made much worse with as the Northampton expansion. The town has expanded, the villages around here have expanded, the roads and the drainage has been fed into the river, the storm water, so naturally. But the river has always had this problem of flooding, even when, as I said, when the railway existed, on top of that bank up there, you know, there was flooding issues with the railway, so it's nothing new. But it never earned a lot of money, it never really took off. There was trouble maintaining the locks and the infrastructure then, and by the time we get to the 1920s, the river was totally derelict. The river wasn't hardly navigable, only to very small boats, only to like rowing boats. And so, you know, a whole new thinking had to be thought about what was going to happen to the river then. So we'll have a carry on walking along, and you can see the devastation in those trees over there. We've had some recently. We had almost like a mini tornado here a few weeks ago, and it brought a lot of these willow trees down. There is another video. Those trees look very natural in that meadow there, but they have been planted for a reason, and on my countryside channel there is a video about those trees if you'd like to know more about those willow trees and what they're used for. And they are harvested, but sadly many of them, as you can see, have succumbed to the winds of this autumn. So we've now come right across the field here. It's quite, as this meadow is very wet, as you'll see. I'll put a little bit of footage just walking along here, and this is now what I call the backwater of the River Nene. This field we're in at the moment is a complete island where these willow trees are, and this is the backwater. And I'm really, it's some time since I've been down here, and it's quite a shame to see it in such a state with all these fallen trees. I know, great for wildlife and all the rest of it, but one worries about, you know, they were trying to get the flow of the river going better, and obviously this slows, you know, when we have a flood, this will act as like a dam, which, okay, some might say is a good thing, because these fields can hold the water and take the water and slow the river down, going downstream. So maybe that's the idea. But I used to canoe right round here, and at the moment in time, with the fallen trees, I can see that would be quite hard work. It used to be a great paddle, you know. In the summer it's very green and lush, and you could be absolutely anywhere, you know. You could almost imagine in a strange way you're up the Amazon kind of thing. It's very, you know, with all the trees grown over and the banks all thick, you know, sort of waist high in growth. It's a very lush, obviously with the constant water. I mean, that's a lovely big old willow tree there, looking great in the winter. You know, it's pretty we haven't got the sun and we've got the fog now, and there's a big bed of wild watercress there at green, you can see. I think the water quality of this river is not too bad. That's something I'd like to do. You know, I'm thinking about buying, I still sometimes canoe on this river, and even occasionally I have even what they call wild swam it, you know, not so much recently, but I would like to do a water test and see whether it has got a lot of bacteria in it, you know, what the condition of water is. I mean, it always looks quite clean these days, but I mean, we'll never know what, you know, obviously Northampton and up towards Northampton many years ago, we had a lot of tanneries with the leather work and the shoes. Northampton is, you know, renowned for its shoe manufacturing, and that put a lot of pollution into the river in those days. But they have certainly done, you know, great works in getting the river cleaned up since. So we'll walk onwards. So unfortunately, the fog has really thickened down now, and it's a job to see, you know, many feet. We can't see the valley and the other side of the valley. We're back onto the main river here, or what is now the main river. I'll intersect with a little picture of one of the earliest maps, or it's a copy of an early map that I have, showing this land, and that dates from the 1600s. And actually, where we've just come from, which I now call the backwater, that in 1636, I believe, off the top of my head, there again I'll correct myself when I put the picture in if I'm wrong on that, in 1636 or thereabouts, they called that the river, and this was in fact the backwater of the River Nene, or Nen. Man has influenced the country so much, and rivers and watercourses, and I think this was widened and deepened, maybe this channel here, to serve a mill, which is, we can't see it because it's all foggy, but there's a mill barely half a mile downstream, going by point going that way. So this was widened and deepened, you know, to give better water source and a permanent water source all year round to the mill. Although the river is quite deep, you know, you can. I've been on the river with boats that you've got depth gauges, and you know, you can get holes and where bits get washed out, and it can be, you know, up to 16 foot deep in parts. It's quite it's not very wide, and it's certainly quite a deep river in places for sure. So here in the gloom we are approaching now. We've walked along the river and we're approaching, this is Cooknoe Lock. You might pronounce it Coggenho, but us locals Cooknoe. That's the preferred way of pronouncing the village name. And this is a typical Nene lock, and we'll have a quick look at that while we're here. So this is we're now at Cooknoe Lock, and this is a typical Nene guillotine lock. The story we'd got to was into the 1920s, when the river was derelict and, you know, you couldn't get far in a rowboat even. Well, in 1930 the River Nene Catchment Board decided a huge programme of works. I think, to be honest, it was like we'd had the great crash and there was a lot of unemployment, and it was more like a bit of a public works scheme as much as anything to help people with employment. And a guy by the name of George Dallas, which headed the Nene Catchment Board, he designed every one of these locks. There's one of these locks roughly every 2 miles, certainly in the navigable section to Peterborough. After then, obviously, there's getting less and less locks, and then by the time you get to Wisbeach, once you're through the Dog in the Doublet lock, which is a big sea defence kind of tidal, where the tide stops, once you get through that is it. The river is tidal again, right through to Wisbeach and beyond to the Wash. But there's one of these every 2 miles. Brilliant locks, I think. Used to be very hard work, as I say. So these were put in the early 1930s, much like a conventional lock. My adaptation of it, I used to bring some school children down here and talk to them about the river. And if you think of it like filling your bathtub, you've got 2 sets of paddle doors in those pointing doors that you wind up there. You wind the ratchet up, and that opens some doors in those pointing doors to let the water in. Obviously, naturally, first of all, you drop the guillotine down. You've got to drop that steel plate down into the water to make a bathtub if you want, and then open the paddles up, and then the lock will fill with water, and when the water balances with the water level either side, you can then open those pointing doors, get your boat in, and then shut the pointing doors, close the paddles, and then very, very gently you can open the guillotine gate and let the water out, and you're down at the next level. So yeah, George Dallas designed all these locks, and I actually his assistant was a guy called John Siddons in the 1930s, and I was born in the house where John Siddons lived, and I still have got some of his tools, and I think he was a distant relative of mine. So my one claim to fame might, as I say, I think John Siddons did an awful lot of the work on these locks with George Dallas, and very clever too. Since, for many, many years now, these have been electrified, which is brilliant. You have a key, you put in that box there, where it says social distance, and you have a key and unlocks that, and that gives you the controls, which is a button to press to raise and lower the guillotine gate. Years ago they had big, where that plywood all is on, they had big handles, brass handles, and you had to wind them up and down. Not difficult because they counterbalanced, but obviously you're talking of between 75 and 95 turns of that handle to get the guillotine back up. And obviously with the pressure of the water against the guillotine when the lock's full, to break the seal, that first, if you like, just to break the seal to let the water start coming out, could need a tremendous force. A lot of older people, or the ladies, or even some not so strong men could really struggle to get break that water seal. And it was a certain knack that you soon learned when you boated on the river. But as I say, now they're all electrified. They only go at very slow speeds, which is much safer, obviously. Quite deep locks, obviously built for commercial, boats. I do just remember, as a schoolboy, we used to come down here and play. It was a bit of a forbidden place, but we still used to come to the river. And I do recall seeing some of the last, in about 1968, 69, there was still canal barges bringing grain from down in London up to Whitworth to Wellingborough, which was a big flour mill. Perhaps you've heard of Whitworth. They do a lot of milling and various other things. And we used to think, my word, these people on these narrowboats, they never used to speak to us. They looked really grumpy. But since I've learned a lot about the life of a boat person, and how hard damn work it was, on those narrow boats, and these were, old people sort of, as well. So I can understand perhaps why they look so grumpy now, but I just did see that, and I'm pleased I did. I just caught the end. There was never a lot of commercial traffic use the river. I think that was its one downfall, really. They spent all this money in the 1700s trying to make it navigable, but it never really took off. And by the 40s, we had the railway, which is just past the mill there. The railway runs just past that red brick mill house, which is the old mill. And so obviously the railway took care of all the traffic that, and the river then basically from 1850s onwards did, start to decline, and then by the 20s it fell into disrepair. So here we are, we walked over from the lock, which can you see in the gloom? I don't know if you'll see that, it's certainly a bit gloomy now, unfortunately. But we've come back across to the backwater, which not much further on down there rejoins the main river, and we're looking at what is known locally as a really lovely old little bridge, you know, probably believed to be 14th, 15th century in origin. It's been rebuilt many times due to floods and sadly you know, falling into disrepair, but it's in very good repair at the moment. And that's the old Packhorse Bridge, and that was an very old drover's road before we had main roads and such like, you know, where people drove cattle. I think it links up with another track further on in the village which goes to Olney in Buckinghamshire, and obviously that would go on further on heading north, you know, to anywhere in the country on these, you know, old droving roads where they used to drive cattle, you know, before we had the likes of transport and roads and cars and lorries, etc. So yeah, very old, lovely little bridge. There again, I've canoed under that many times. So this, as you can see, we're right in the middle of this big water meadow now, and how wet this lies in the winter time here. We're right in the middle, and this is all this wet, boggy area. The sheep have been moved out because it has got so wet now, and we've had it quite dry as well this year here, obviously, but it's wonderful that this meadow survives. So many of these lovely meadows were dug up. The Nene Valley is blessed, if you like, with some wonderful sand and gravel, some of the best, finest gravel for making concrete in the country, and so much of the Nene Valley meadows has been dug up for gravel production over the years. But thankfully this is one big meadow that hasn't, and I think is pretty safe now. And where they do, they're digging some gravel on some arable land the other side of our village, and now they have to, by statutory rights, put the land back to how it was before they started. We have some great lakes in the distance, in the gloom. There is a whole chain of lakes over there which have been dug out for gravel, but thankfully this field survives onwards, and it's lovely. It's really super in the summer. It's got a sort of quite an eerie, magical feel today with the mist and the fog, really. So there we go. Get lots of different birds here in this water and these conditions. Obviously, last winter we even had some white little egret birds come, and it was one of those times I thought, well, I must go down and film those. You know, we haven't seen any of those, you know, obviously coming up from the south. Never had those before. Then we had that really cold spell of weather where the wind turned easterly, and we had some really severe frosts for a few nights, and they just disappeared. I presume they took fright and went back south again, so I miss them. Some real wind damage there you can see of the last few weeks. As I say, we almost had like a mini tornado here one Sunday morning for about 20 minutes, and you can see how some of these trees, they still had their leaves on then, so they really succumbed to this, you know, really strong wind, and it's really taken that one just on the edge here. So the river there looks really quite eerie with the mist blowing along. I think I've said on another one of my videos that there's more days when the river looks as though it's flowing upstream than it is downstream. The wind is behind, the wind is blowing the river upstream today. In normal conditions, the river is a very slow running river. It doesn't fall many feet or metres between here and Peterborough. And obviously, you know, as I say, it in times of flood, that is a totally different, you know, thing altogether. You know, the water just rushes through here, and say comes well into this meadow, right up to these, and is even up. In fact, can you see the darker? You can see some dark marks around the bottom of the tree trunks there, where the water has been up to them. You know, which is probably another 2 foot or 2 to 3 feet above. You know, this already, so you've probably got a rise of 7, 8, 9 foot there altogether, so it really does flood. Over in a distance there, whether you'll pick that out, you can just make out the railway line there, the old railway line. I did a little video on that. Another interesting thing, a family connection. I've been connected with this river all my life. You know, I've fell in it, fished in it, canoed in it, boated on it, seen it in all seasons and conditions. My great grandfather, in round about the 1880s, the mid 1880s, we apparently had almost like a mini ice age. We had some really severe winters then, and it was a family story told, and I used to think as a child, oh yeah, that's a likely story. But my granddad told me that his dad had actually ice skated all the way up from Oundle, right through to Northampton on the river, because it was so frozen, and then lo and behold he caught the train home back to Oundle from Northampton, as you could in those days. And I thought, yeah, you know. And then we had a guy come to our local village heritage society, and lo and behold, one of his family members had actually also done this, and he had better documentary evidence of this happening in the 1880s. And so now I have no doubt in believing the story that they were obviously, there wasn't a lot to do in the winter, and ice skating, you know, was a big thing that you did, you know, right from a child. When the first, you know, particularly when the floods frozen over in the meadows, when it was whether the water was not very deep and it froze pretty quickly, there was lots of ice skating went on. But as I say, he actually skated right up from Oundle to Northampton and then caught the train home, which must have been, you know, I don't know how long I'd like to know how long it took him, you know. And so there we go. I hope you've enjoyed that little walk out with me on this rather misty, murky December day. I was just coming out for a walk and I thought, oh, I'll grab the camera again. And as always, thank you for watching. I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas that watches this, and thank you for watching my videos over the year. It's been brilliant. Thank you for subscribing, thank you for liking, and all your wonderful comments. And I'm sure, hopefully, with better conditions in 2022, we can make some better videos anyway. I've been somewhat limited with restrictions this year again, but anyway, thank you to everybody from the bottom of my heart that's watched my videos and liked and thanked and subscribed. And I wish you all the best, and catch up with you very shortly with another video, and bye for now anyway.